The email came in at exactly 2:30 a.m., just as the cabin lights dimmed and the SA Palo skyline vanished beneath the clouds. Subject line termination, notice effective immediately. For a few seconds, I couldn't process what I was reading. I kept blinking, thinking maybe the screen hadn't fully loaded, but it had. It was all there in perfect clarity. My name, my role, and the sentence that made my heart drop through the floor. Your employment with Venturon Technologies has been terminated. Effective immediately. Your access has been revoked. Please do not return to any company property. No call, no meeting, no thank you, just this sterile final notice. And the sender, Grayson Hart, the CEO himself, the very man who shook my hand 2 weeks ago and said, "You're the only one I trust to pull this off." Marin, I looked around the cabin. Everyone else was asleep, curled into their business class pods with eye masks and wine-stained pillows. I was alone with the hum of the jet engines and a silence that suddenly felt louder than anything I'd ever heard. 10 days, 3 continents, Tokyo for initial alignment, London for compliance, as Paulo for the close. I hadn't just participated in this deal, I'd built it. 3 global giants, 1 synchronized move to Venturon's cloud system, 1.5 billion across 5 years, and now I didn't even work there anymore. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not rage, not yet, just disbelief, like someone had pulled the ground out from under me while I was still mid-step. I stared at the laptop in front of me for another full minute. Then, without saying a word, I reached under the seat and pulled out a second laptop, matte black, unbranded, and encrypted, the one no one at Venturon knew existed. I opened it, logged in, watched the screen blink awake, and I smiled. They thought this was the end of my journey. They had no idea I'd already started another one. 3 weeks earlier, I was standing in that same glass-paneled boardroom on the 32nd floor watching grown men scramble to save a collapsing $400 million contract. The client, a notoriously difficult European consortium, had walked out mid-negotiation. Legal was in panic, finance was pointing fingers, and the VP of global sales had nearly burst into tears. I didn't wait to be asked. I just walked in, grabbed the abandoned proposal from the table, rewrote the core structure in 20 minutes, and requested a private call with the consortium's head delegate. By the next morning, the contract was not only salvaged, it was expanded to include 2 new territories. That wasn't my first miracle for Venturon, it was just the most recent one. After the win, there was a champagne toast in the executive lounge. People clapped. Grayson gave one of his hollow grins and said, "Now that's the kind of leadership we need at the next level." Someone even slipped a promotion rumor into the hallway chatter. Executive Vice President Global Strategy. The title sounded ridiculous, overblown, and overdue. Because I wasn't just a closer. I was the firewall. The one they called when the men in suits couldn't land the plane. I'd negotiated with energy giants, telecom empires, and foreign ministries. I spoke 4 languages, kept 2 phones, and lived out of airports for 7 years. I made Venturon look far more stable than it really was. And still the title never came. A week after the champagne, I was told the promotion was in progress, then under review, then silence. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. Maybe they were restructuring. Maybe HR was slow. Maybe. For once, it wasn't personal. Then I overheard it. It was during a board lunch. I was in the adjoining conference room preparing a portfolio. The sliding door had been left slightly open. I mean, come on. One board member chuckled, "Marin's brilliant, but let's be honest, she walks into a room and no other guy wants to speak. She dominates every pitch." Another replied, "Yeah, she's not exactly EVP material. She's more field ops. Field ops like I was some glorified negotiator they could fly around and then forget about." That moment stuck with me longer than the missed promotion because the truth was clear. They didn't want to promote me. They wanted to contain me. Too confident, too polished, too many wins that couldn't be redirected to someone else. I was the one they called when the deals needed saving, but never the one they wanted at the table when credit was handed out. I stood there in that empty conference room holding the portfolio I'd spent weeks building and realized something bitter but undeniable. It wasn't about merit, it was about threat perception. The quiet ones got elevated. The loud ones, especially the ones like me, got sidelined. And yet I didn't storm out. I didn't raise hell. I returned to my desk, booked 3 back-to-back international flights, and got to work on the biggest deal of the company's history. Because if they wouldn't give me the title, I'd build one of my own. It's funny how betrayal rarely arrives with a loud crash. Sometimes it drips in like a slow leak, unnoticed at first, until you're standing in a room ankle-deep in water wondering when it started. A year ago, Mallory Hart was in trouble. She'd just been hired into Venturon as a strategic advisor, a vague title padded by legacy. Grayson's daughter. She had no technical background, barely 2 years of corporate experience, and one very large mistake in unauthorized data transfer during a client demo that accidentally exposed personal information from a pilot partner in Singapore. It should have been a public scandal. The legal team panicked. The marketing department froze. And Grayson, he called me. Clean it up quietly, he said over the phone. She didn't mean to. She just didn't know. I didn't argue. I pulled every connection I had, worked around the clock to contain the leak, and spun the story into a beta testing glitch that never made it past trade blogs. I even took the media call myself so her name wouldn't appear in any press notes. No one thanked me. I didn't ask for it. I told myself it was loyalty, that protecting the company meant protecting everyone in it, even the CEO's daughter. But loyalty starts to rot when it isn't mutual. 3 days before my trip across continents, I opened a shared drive to finalize our pitch materials for the Trident deal. These were the slides I'd been refining for weeks. Charts, analytics, proposal structure, all laid out with precision. There they were, perfect, exactly how I'd left them, except for one detail. The document properties listed the author as Mallory Hart. At first I thought it was a mistake. Maybe she had downloaded them and accidentally saved over. But as I clicked through the deck, I realized she had made subtle edits, rephrasing bullet points, adjusting the layout slightly, but keeping my entire structure intact. The bones were mine, the pitch was mine, the name on it wasn't. She hadn't even bothered to notify me. That night, I sat in my apartment with the city lights glowing just beyond the window. I stared at the slide deck until the lines blurred. And then I did something I wasn't proud of. I closed it. I didn't confront her. I didn't message Grayson. I didn't tell a soul, because deep down I already knew what would happen. They'd dismiss it as collaboration. They'd say I was imagining things. Worse, they'd think I was being territorial or emotional. That word always came up when a woman questioned power. So I said nothing. I packed my bags. I finalized my flight routes, and I told myself it didn't matter. But it did, because the hurt wasn't loud. It didn't explode. It seeped in slowly every time someone praised her strategic clarity. Every time I sat in a meeting and watched her recite my words like they were hers. I had protected her, covered for her, saved her reputation. And now she was erasing mine. I've never been one to panic, not when deals collapse, not when executives melt down in boardrooms, and certainly not when my own future begins to shift beneath my feet. So when I realized the promotion wasn't coming, when I saw Mallory's name on my slides and felt the weight of erasure pressing in, I didn't yell. I didn't storm out. I pivoted quietly, strategically. The truth was, I had already started building the parachute 6 months earlier. Not because I expected betrayal, but because experience had taught me power respects leverage, not loyalty. Venturon didn't always look the way it did now. When I joined, it was scrappy, still climbing toward mid-tier status, full of sharp minds and real ambition. Over time, as investors poured in and politics took root, the soul of the company shifted. Grayson stopped hiring the best candidates and started promoting the S. A fest. The innovation team was gutted. Compliance was weaponized, and anyone with independent ideas was gradually frozen out. Many of those people were my friends. Some were mentors. All of them, like me, had quietly kept building, just no longer for Venturon. I called the project Trident. No splashy pitch deck, no seed round fanfare, just a name, a legal structure, and a growing team of former engineers, product strategists, and compliance specialists who understood the pain of being left behind by the very machine they helped create. Every part of Trident was designed to correct the exact things Venturon had broken. Agility instead of bureaucracy, transparency instead of control, and above all, client-centered thinking. We didn't announce it. We didn't need to. It wasn't a revenge company. It was a future waiting to be activated. Still, I kept it quiet. I was still under contract, still earning their trust, and I had no intention of burning a bridge unless someone else lit the match first. That moment came sooner than I expected. It was during a long dinner in São Paulo, seated across from Luis Mata, the CEO of Brasilinc, one of the 3 legacy firms in the Trident deal. We'd just completed our 3rd round of proposal fine-tuning, and he was nursing a glass of whiskey. His tie loosened, the pressure of billion-dollar decisions momentarily off his shoulders. He looked at me, serious, quiet, and asked a question I wasn't prepared for. What would it take for you to lead instead of follow? I said, fork halfway to my mouth. He continued, "You don't speak like an employee. You speak like someone who built something from the ground up. So why aren't you running the company?" I laughed gently. "Because someone else inherited it." He smiled but didn't laugh. "But if you ever decide to change that, call me." Some of us prefer to back leaders, not logos. That moment stuck with me, not because it was flattering, though it was, but because it mirrored everything I'd been trying to ignore. Clients could sense it. They felt the gap between the person doing the work and the people taking the credit. They saw the same things I did. When I returned to New York, I didn't tell anyone what Luis had said. I didn't tell them about the side calls I'd begun receiving from Telnova's procurement director or the subtle inquiries from Eurocom's legal team about alternative partnership models, but I did expand Trevant's charter. I scheduled quiet meetings with my core group, former legal lead Jenna Park systems architect Raheem Silva and ex-finance strategist Noah Tan. We didn't use company emails, we didn't meet in offices. We met in apartments over dinner on encrypted channels. Every piece was falling into place. Venturon thought I was there closer, but I had already started. Something they couldn't see, a company that didn't need to close deals with power, but with purpose.